I got something really exciting for you guys. This has been requested a lot by my students, so I finally decided to put together a logo export file guide so you can have all the templates ready to go. You don't have to worry about sizing all these documents and figuring out how to export. The guide is all here for you, and we're going to be working through this throughout the next lesson or two to export all of our files in both a digital RGB environment and also a CMYK print environment. So we're going to have print files and digital files to provide for the clients in separate folders. So to open up the logo export file guide, you can find it in where you find the resources in the class. If you're on Udemy, you can find it right in the lesson. If you're on Skillshare, you can easily find that in the project section of the course where all the zip files are. So here we go. We have two different versions. There's an RGB guide, and then there's also a CMYK. We always like to start with CMYK because that's what we just finished doing our logo in, is CMYK. So we're going to just start dragging these files in, and I have them all labeled so you kind of know which one to drag in. And just a quick note, I like to leave a little bit of white space or margin when I'm loading my logos in, because when you do export these as JPEGs and PNG, if you do it all the way out to the edge, especially as a JPEG, some clients don't have that buffer zone and they'll bump that logo really close to something. So if you add a little padding and a little margin there, you can kind of show the client kind of what a proper spacing would be. So just kind of a little habit I've gotten into over the years. Well, let's get started. We're going to go to the logo presentations we did, and we have everything we need. We just have to kind of copy and paste everything and adapt it. So let's take our first ones and bring it over. And I've already kind of set those up. You can kind of see where I set them up along kind of these margins. And down here in your layers panel, I have the guides all as a separate layer. So you can just toggle that off if you don't want to have any of that mess and you just want to kind of work off of that. You can toggle that on and off. You can also just delete this layer if you want, if you don't need those guides. That's just there for your help. So we're going to continue to do this. What I did is I adapted both of these, the vertical and the horizontal, and then I adapted the black and whites, and I'm just going to continue to go. So we have all four different kinds of presentations, which we have here. So we have a dark background, light background, single color, and black and white. So now I'm going to do the single color and bring that in. This one's a little bit challenging because, you can't see it on white. So a little trick I do is I make it black and get it set up, and then I can just switch it back to white. So this will be your single color. It's always nice to have a single color option for your logo. We're just going to we're not going to make it perfect, but we're just going to leave just enough margin in there so the client doesn't bump the logo right up to something. You kind of have that built-in padding there for them. And we're going to go ahead and bring this one in. And you can always adjust these sizes. So let's say the margin is too big there. This is a perfect square. So if your logo has a different shape, you could just go to File, Document Setup. You just click on Edit Artboards if you ever want to add or edit artboards. And then I can change the size right up here. So this is a 6 by 6 inch square. And if you want to change the sizes of the document, say you want to use centimeters, I have this kind of written out in the guide. You go to File, Document Setup, and you just do drop down, and you could switch it to centimeters or whatever you want to do. So I have it in inches because that's what we use in the United States, but feel free to switch it to centimeters if you need to. So also if I want to change the size, we can. So let's go back up, and you could just change it and adjust it. But for right now, I'm going to leave it into the template because I just kind of did a square because you just never know all the different size logos you guys are going to create with it. We can also go back to our presentation and grab this version. And once we already have this done, exporting files is a cakewalk because you already have everything set up that you need to do. So this is for dark background. So it's going to be put on dark background. So that's why the text is going to remain white because it's going to be put on the darker background. So we need to have the white text. And I have a lot of clients say they need this because they're always putting it on darker backgrounds or they need to be able to do that. So this is a very important version to have. Okay, so we have those kind of main versions there ready to go. We can also do a watermark, which we have in our presentation already set up here. So we can get that and post that in here. Watermarks are great for letterheads and different type of things. So I have it as a nice, very light gray color. And anything that's white is going to be that's transparent, so that'll export transparent, so they could put that in on any color, even if it's you know, a vanilla color page. I have this background graphic, which is what I used over here in the presentation, just so they can have that as a background to use. And so I have it nice and big. I think this is 12 inches by 12 inches. And I can go always to document setup and edit artboards to check my size. So that's 12 by 12. It's a pretty large size. So when I do export that out, that's going to be very high res. Okay, so we have another section. So this section is just for the word mark or letter mark. So this is, we need to divide our symbol because sometimes they want just the symbol. Sometimes they're going to just want the typography. So we're going to be able to provide that broken down for them. So I went ahead and loaded these in. So this is going to be just the letter mark. So with this is full color, which we kind of use our gray, so that's okay. And then we have the dark background version, which we're going to want to make this white. So you're not going to be able to see it, but when you export it as a PNG, you'll be able to see it and use it. So last one is, this is for just the logo mark, and we have a full color and then also one for dark backgrounds. So once again, we can borrow from what we already have here. So this is our full color wave or crest or whatever you want to call it. We're going to put it right there. And then we can also just go ahead and copy and paste this and have this as the white. So that's going to be for dark backgrounds. So we want to have nice and light. So it's there, you just can't see it. So you can see how quickly we were able to kind of place all these on here since we already did the client presentation. We're just kind of borrowing from that and pasting it in here. So now what do? We're going to be going to File, and we're going to be exporting these in a couple of different formats. And it's going to all, since we have the artboard system, when you export it artboards, it's going to export each one of them as a separate file. So once again, if you ever want to edit this, you can edit the size. You can add a new artboard by just going to File. You're going to do anytime you want to edit artboards, go to File, Document Setup, Edit Artboards. You can actually add new ones. Here's kind of the new artboard. You can go ahead and click on that and edit. And you notice how they all have numbers. When you can export just a certain number range. So if you only want to export artboards 1 through 5, you don't have to export the whole document each time. And that's going to come in handy when we start to export. So if you ever want to rename it, you go up here and rename it. And if you ever want to delete it, you just press the delete button and voila. So just kind of going through a little bit of how that artboard system works. Let's go ahead and export. This is for print and CMYK mode. So we always want to make sure it's CMYK. This document's already set up that way for you. And so we're going to go to File, Export. We're going to do Export As. We're going to do a couple different things. The first thing, we want to provide PNGs for everything. We always want to have that transparent background option for clients. So we're going to go ahead and click on Use Artboards. So what's going to happen when they click on Use Artboards, it's going to crop everything to the artboards all the way across. We could do all, so let's go ahead and click all, or you can do a range if you only want to do the top 8. You can do 1 through 8. So we're going to do all. We're just going to export to the desktop. I'm just going to go ahead and export. And I like to keep them at a high resolution. 300 is standard, but I like to do 600 because it increases that resolution a little bit without increasing the actual size of it. So I just like to stick with anywhere from 300 to 600. Just make sure it's higher than 300. Because I have a lot of clients who put these logos and they make it really big and they don't understand how to work with files. So if I make it bigger than I need to, if they do stretch it farther than they need to, it's not going to pixelate as much. So I'm just doing this for the client's benefit to kind of help them out a little bit, bumping that up just a little bit. And we want to make sure it's on transparent. Everything default is fine. We're going to click on OK, and it's going to take a few minutes to export all those different artboards out as PNGs. And I'll kind of show you what that looks like here in a minute. So it exports all these different files to the desktop as separate little files. And we can go ahead and look and see what we have. So you can see the PNGs here that are going to be great for the client to use. I forgot to take away that little margin, so you just make sure you remove that before you export. And I have all my little symbols here. And I like to categorize these and put them in different folders. So I'll put one in a symbol folder, a full logo folder, a color version. So create different folders for your clients so that they can have a system to kind of be able to find certain files. So this would be the CMYK folder, and then you would have an RGB folder, which is what we're going to do in the next file. So these are all the print ones. Make sure you label them as such, so CMYK or print files, so they can understand whenever they go to print something or to make a flyer or a poster, they're going to use these files. So there we have it. There's the CMYK. This makes it very simple. You don't have to sit there and size everything up. And so now we're going to open up the next file, and this is pretty much the same, but it's RGB mode. It's set up in RGB color mode. And also there's an additional social media profile image added so that you can have that. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time adapting all of these just like we did before. This is already set up in the RGB color mode, so when you drag it over, it'll automatically change those colors for you. And that's pretty much it. It's going to be the same thing. And also another thing before we do the digital files, let's switch back to the CMYK. There's one other thing we need to do. We don't really need JPEGs because that's going to be, JPEGs are really used for digital. So we're going to use the JPEGs in the digital one we're getting ready to do. But we do need a vector file. You know, we sent all these PNGs, but the client always needs a good vector file of the logo. So what I'm going to do is I will remove those at another time, but I would go to File, Save As. You're just going to save this entire document as an Illustrator file. And what you could do is you can go ahead and take off all these extra things and customize it for the client. So instead of logo export file guide, you can say, you know, client logo management guide. And you can go, feel free to change all this so it kind of helps the designer or the client, whoever's going to be managing all the files after you're done, they can have a nice guide for them. So feel free to customize this guide, send it to your clients, make sure you change it, and you want to make sure you remove certain things and maybe put your name up there. So, or a contact if someone needed to contact you about how to use the logo. So just have this as the guide and kind of guide them through all of that as an Illustrator file. So you'll just need to go to File and save this whole thing as after you customize it as an Illustrator file. So right now we have this big Illustrator file to send to the client, and we also have all these PNGs that could be used for print. And the last thing we're going to do is do the JPEGs for the digital. We're also going to do PNGs for digital as well. So there's going to be a lot of files. There could be about 60 or so files. And then when we have the vectors and when they can open this up, they have access to all the vectors. And then they'll have access to all the PNGs, and which have the transparent backgrounds. And then they'll have the JPEGs, which always has a white background. So there you have it. They'll have everything they need. So let's switch over to RGB next. We're here back into the RGB mode, and we're going to do the same thing and add them all. So let's just add them all, and then of course we have the social media profile image, which is really good for Facebook, kind of that small perfect square. And so you'd go ahead and get everything ready for them, just like we just did in the CMYK mode. And now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go to File, Export As, and we're going to do PNGs. And you might want to hand select what PNGs you think the client's going to need after you export all of them. Or you can export a range. You don't have to export everything. You can export a range of artboards. So if I want to do 1 through 5, it'll just do the first 5 artboards. And if you want to ever check what your artboard name is, go to File, Document Setup, and I know that's 1 through 5, so it would be these 5. Okay, so I'm going to export as the PNG, and also, this is a little bit different, I'm going to export as a JPEG. So I'm going to export all these as a JPEG. I'm going to export them all. And here's another thing with resolution. Standard for JPEGs and for digital environments, for web environments, is 72 ppi. That's standard, but with Retina display screens and higher resolution screens, I feel like lately I want to kind of do more of the medium. And if you can do 300, it just sends the file sizes really high. So if they're going to use this for a website, it might make file sizes that are too big for them. So, you know, you could do happy medium right here in the middle. Just look at the resolution and see how they're looking after you export it. If it's blurry, you know, you can always just do the high. So let's just do medium, and that's all we need to do. We can always lower the file size a little bit by lowering the quality. Sometimes, since this is definitely going to be used for digital, sometimes I like to lower it to maybe 8 or 9, and it just reduces that file size a little bit, which is so important when it comes to, you know, web and making sure your website loads fast. So just click OK. And now it's going to do the same thing, exporting all my JPEGs. So I would have a separate file for RGB files for print or for digital, and a separate one for CMYK, which is for print. So the client can decide, okay, I'm looking for a print file. I'm going to go into this folder, and then now I'm looking for a full color version, and they'll go into that folder so they can kind of have their own little file system. You zip all the files up, you send it to the client, you are officially done. Go ahead and send that invoice, get paid, get your other half of your payment, and you're ready to go.